piece in the Globe and Mail this week kind of caught my eye because having gone through this, I understand the feelings involved in letting go of the kids around this time of year, of course. Some kids are getting ready to fly the nest. They're heading off to go to university, in some cases in other provinces, other cities, or they're launching themselves out on jobs and traveling away, or even just staying in the same city but living separately from their parents. And it seems there is a real art to learning how to let go. Joining us is the author of that piece, Katherine Martinko. She is the author of Childhood Unplugged, Practical Advice to Get Kids Off Screens and Find Balance. And we're talking to her today not only about her experience as a mom, but her earlier experience as the kid flying away from the nest. Katherine, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What happened when you kind of came of age and launched yourself out into the world?
Yeah, well, it was sort of an interesting mix of my parents being very hands-off. So I applied to university when I was in grade 12. Seems like quite a long time ago now, and my parents were completely uninvolved with that process. I don't even think they asked what programs I was applying to. And then I ended up getting accepted at the University of Toronto, but deferring my starting year there. And I went off to live in Brazil on a beach for a year. And I can tell you my parents had a few more things to say about that than they did about my educational choices. But even when I came back after a year and settled down into school, they still remained at a distance, and I think that I knew that they were there. They were ready to step in if there were any kind of emergency, but they also recognized that I was now at a stage in life where I had to start making these decisions for myself and even sorting out any challenges that I might come across on my own. And I think that that's something that we struggle with as parents, especially nowadays, to strike that balance between supporting our kids and also giving them the space for independence that they need.
Well, fast forward now to you as a parent. How are you finding that process of starting to let go?
I'm not quite there yet. My oldest son is just starting grade 11. This was a topic my editor was chatting with me about. It's something that a lot of my friends are dealing with their kids. So it's certainly on our radar. And I do see this common theme of parents, there's sort of two things going on where we need to be training our children to have the skills to be independent and to go out into the world and feel like they're capable and able to handle things on their own. But we as parents have to subtract ourselves from that situation. We need to step out of the way, move back, remove ourselves and give them that space. So yeah, I think that it can be hard. The parental instinct is to protect and to guard and to support. It's what we have done for 18 years. And it can feel very foreign to take on a new role in our kids' lives.
Are some kids different? Because with my own kids, at 17, my daughter insisted she was going straight from high school into university, which is unusual here in Quebec. Usually they go to a couple of years of cégep first, but she was determined and off she went, left Montreal from Ottawa, and she was completely ready for independent living, more than ready. And we had confidence she would be able to make it. With our son, he didn't seem to be in the same space right away. Did you hear that from parents, that they have to have different approaches depending on the temperament of their kids?
Yes, certainly that is the case. I think it's not one size fits all. Different kids are going to have different needs. Some need a lot more support than others. The situation that you just described just sort of feels like my own family when I was younger. My sister and I left very young. My brothers hung around for a bit longer. So it does depend on the child, but I do think it's still important to not just settle into that comfortable zone of feeling you can protect your child longer than they need it, because they do at a certain point need to be pushed, I think, to go out on their own and to just handle things independently.
In your piece, you have this great expression of parents having to learn to move from manager to mentor, which I kind of like when we imagine in parenting as mentoring when our kids reach that adulthood, reach that age when they're trying to establish their independence. What kind of advice did you gather from the people you spoke to?
It was a real range of advice. It was quite interesting talking to some of these parents. The communication thing was interesting. I think that especially with modern technology, everyone's got phones, they're texting constantly. There's a tendency to want to talk to your child every single day. But several of the older kids that I talked to said they don't want to hear from the parents every day. And they feel that it's important for the parent to ask the child whether or not they want to be contacted on a daily basis. No surprise, FaceTime calls was another thing I heard from a few people, because I guess you just never really know where your kid's going to be when you FaceTime them, and they might feel pressure to answer and not want to. Not showing up, of course, unannounced at your child's new home. They now are an independent adult. They inhabit their own space, and you don't necessarily have the right to just show up without any kind of notice. There was some interesting discussion around tracking. Obviously, again, with modern technology, a lot of parents are used to watching where their children are at every point. But there comes a point where you need to stop doing that, I think, out of respect for your child's privacy. And, also for your kids' own sake, I think there's been some interesting research, actually, that's shown that kids who know that their parents are tracking them are often more inclined to get into riskier situations because they just think that they can get found. So I think that's an important psychological shift that families have to navigate on their own.
In terms of leveraging the technology, do you think that was one of the bigger things for some parents to get over, is the ability to know 24 hours a day exactly where your kid is because of tracking technology? Because to me, I feel at a certain point, you don't really want to know. It just makes you worry.
I agree. I think that too much information can sometimes just cause you to lie in bed at night and ruminate and fret about what your kid might be up to. I think that sometimes just having that distance can be reassuring for the parent. They just have to trust their child can do it on their own.
After having spoken to these parents who have gone through it, do you think you're better prepared now for your next few years with your son?
I think so. I mean, I have a son whose personality is very fiercely independent. So I would say even at this point, he's trying to pull away from me as much as he can in various ways. So I think that is going to happen naturally. Of course, I do have to override that instinct to keep tabs on him all the time. But, I think as parents, we have to draw on retrospection. We have to think about our own memories of how amazing it felt to be free and off in the world. And, my parents had no idea where I was much of the time and what I was deciding to do with my future. They very much just let me go off and do it. And I want my kids to be able to feel that same level of freedom.
Katherine, thanks for speaking to us today on CJ80.
No, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Katherine Martinko, author of Childhood Unplugged, Practical Advice to Get Kids Off Screens and Find Balance.